Hey everybody, it's Austin Howell once again for Briggs and Howell Film Critiques. It's the Alphabetical Movie Project, Episode 3. So we're chugging along here through my numerical movies. I'm getting about to the halfway point through that, and then we can finally get to the letters, finally. But before we get to that, let's jump right into the first movie. So I had a good batch this week. I was really happy, and a lot of horror-based movies, so that's always a lot of fun. First one is going to be 28 Days Later. Now, a lot of people are a big fan of this movie, and I am too. It came out the same year I worked at a movie theater back in 2002, and I remember hearing a lot of hype about it, and hearing that it was like one of the scariest movies to come along in years. It was like the scariest thing to come along since Blair Witch, which is stupid because Blair Witch isn't scary, so that's dumb. So I was kind of like, eh, and there hadn't been a lot of zombie movies in a while, and before you start screaming in the comments, I know it's not a zombie movie, I know it's the Rage virus, I get it. But you have to say that this movie, along with, Shaun of the Dead and the Dawn of the Dead remake, kind of reinvigorated the zombie genre because, in the 90s there just wasn't a whole lot, and what we had wasn't very good. So 28 Days Later, man, if you don't know the story, if you haven't seen this movie, it's really, really interesting. It has almost the same opening as The Walking Dead, which has been kind of a point of contention. But, the guy wakes up after a coma in a hospital after about a month, and everything's gone to hell. It's set in London. And what makes this movie great is Danny Boyle directed it, and he was able to get these incredible shots throughout London where they were able to stop traffic and set up streets to really make London look like it was completely abandoned. It's really incredible when you watch the movie, and it just makes you wonder, how the hell did he get, a city with millions of people, almost like a New York City, to look completely abandoned? It's really something, even to this day. It holds up, and he shot it very guerrilla style. He shot it with these digital cameras that were a little low quality for the time, but it kind of gives it a more visceral feel, that you're sort of watching almost like a documentary. You're not supposed to be watching, following these people around. But, it's about these people with this rage virus, and they almost act like zombies. They attack, but they're not really even, really attacking to eat. They're just kind of crazy, running at you super fast and just sort of lunging at anything that moves. And it's really scary stuff, And the fact that you can, if anything gets on you or in you, blood-wise, saliva-wise, anything, you're screwed. So, if you haven't seen 28 Days Later, which I can't imagine a lot of people watching this video probably haven't, but if you haven't, man, do yourself a treat, man. Watch 28 Days Later, man. It holds up, tremendously. And it kind of leads into, of course, if I watch 28 Days Later, then we got to move right into 28 Weeks Later, the sequel that came out in 2007. Now, I'm a big fan of this sequel as well. I know a lot of people, weren't as much a fan of it, and, I know it's generally seen as a pretty good movie. I think it's a great movie. I'm a big fan of it. It's definitely got a different feel than the first one because it's following almost the aftermath of 28 Days Later. Things have settled down. The American army has moved in. They teamed with NATO. They're trying to, eradicate the disease. They think London's pretty much disease-free. And so they start moving people back into London and into this sort of complex, that they've built while they're still cleaning out the surrounding neighborhoods and suburbs and such. And, they think the thing is gone. And, of course, somebody who they find out is kind of immune to the disease, but still has the rage virus in them. They bring her in for testing, and of course, she infects somebody else who is not immune to it, and all hell breaks loose in the facility, obviously. But one of the cool things about this movie is it was back in 2007. It has a lot of people that we know today that really broke out sort of years later after this movie came out. For instance, Jeremy Renner, you might know him as Hawkeye in The Avengers, is in here. He plays like a sniper that's sort of protecting these two kids, as they're trying to escape the madness. Idris Elba, from The Wire and Pacific Rim, and of course he's Heimdall and Thor. He's in this as well, playing sort of like the general guy in charge of the military, and he's the one who basically orders it, basically says screw it halfway through, and they start just kind of shooting people and going nuts. there's Rose Byrne is in this movie, who a lot of people know from Bridesmaids. She was in Neighbors. She's here as well as a nurse, of course, a very non-comedic role before Bridesmaids. But it's got a really solid cast. And Robert Carlyle, especially, the main guy who plays a dad to these two kids, really shines out. He's super scary looking when he becomes like a rage monster halfway through this movie. He is frightening looking, especially for a guy from like the Full Monty, who you wouldn't think would be very scary looking as, a rage-infected sort of zombie thing, but he's really quite frightening. He's very good. But it's really solid. It has, in my opinion, one of the best opening scenes to a movie ever. I mean, just absolutely chaotic and terrifying. It's about, this sort of setup where this family gets attacked in a farmhouse. It's really crazy stuff. But yeah, if you didn't get a chance to check out 28 Weeks Later, and you're a fan of 28 Days, and you kind of just skipped it just to, just because you heard, sort of meager things about it, give it another look. It's really good. I really like 28 Days Later, or 28 Days and 28 Weeks Later, and it still gives me hope that we'll get 28 Months Later at some point. I don't think it's going to happen. Danny Boyle's talked about it here and there, but I don't see it happening. Nothing's really gone about it. But anyways, moving on to the next couple ones. So, and almost, speaking of crazy people who run around and bite blood out of people, our next movie is 30 Days of Night. The vampire movie, actually the same year, oddly enough, as 28 Weeks Later, back in 2007. And 30 Days of Night is a movie a lot of people overlooked back in 2007. I don't remember it being a giant success at the box office, but it's got a really, really cool premise if you've never actually gone back and seen it. It's about a Alaskan town. Josh Hartnett, it's kind of one of his last big movies, mainstream movies, before he kind of, laid low for a little while. He's been doing TV and such, but, this is one of his last things before he kind of dropped off for a little while. But he plays a sheriff of a very small Alaskan town. A lot of people move out for about a month because there's a month in this Alaska town where for 30 days it's basically pitch black outside. There's no sun, there's no sunrise, no sunset. Nothing for about 30 days, and it gives the perfect opportunity for an old group of vampires to roll in, and of course without any sunlight just absolutely ransack this town of like 150 people. So it's basically these guys trying to survive for that whole month, and after surviving the initial onslaught, them trying to hide out and just basically survive from these vampires who are really sadistic in this movie. I mean, they're really hardcore vampires. I mean, this ain't Twilight vampires here, despite the fact that the director of this movie went on to direct Twilight Eclipse, which I find kind of ironic. So, it's a good movie though. I don't think it's a great movie. I think it suffers from a few pacing problems kind of in the middle. It's a near 2-hour movie, and I don't think it needs to be. It needs about 15 minutes trimmed kind of off the middle right there. I think there's a part where they could have sped it up a little bit. But it's got a pretty solid supporting cast, a lot of character actors that you'll recognize from different TV shows and things. But not a bad movie. 30 Days of Night is one of those I classify as almost awesome. Like awesome premise, awesome vampires, a lot of blood, solid horror stuff, but like it just shy of being like a classic, but it's still pretty good. If you didn't check it out and you're a fan of really good like vampire flicks where they're the complete opposite of Twilight, obviously, then give 30 Days of Night a look. It's a really solid movie. And finally, for my final movie this week, it's the Judd Apatow classic, the movie we all love, Steve Carell's The 40-Year-Old Virgin. So, I remember when this movie came out, and I started seeing the trailers for it back in 2005, I was kind of like, it looks funny, but is it going to be one of those one-joke movies where it's just all these jokes about him being a virgin, and, he's the, sort of shy, nerdy guy who just never got laid, whatever it is. And, Judd Apatow, this is his first really big movie, obviously, because he had come off of Freaks and Geeks, and he was a writer and a producer, but he had never really broken out as a director yet. And, man, when this movie came out, I just remember it being an absolute juggernaut. I mean, I went and saw this movie. Pretty sure I saw it like 2 or 3 days after it came out, just because, I wasn't in a hurry to see it, but I kept hearing great things about it. People tell me they just were falling out of their seats laughing. It was just one of the funniest movies they'd ever seen, and I was absolutely impressed with it, man. I came out of that movie just going, wow, like that may have been one of the best comedies I've seen in years, and it still holds up. I mean, this movie, believe it or not, this movie's 10 years old. I mean, you want to feel old. This movie feels so recent, especially with the cast that it has, but it's 10 years old, man, 2005. And what's really great about it is the cast of people that are in this movie that went on to become giant stars, and kind of this movie helped a lot of them really break out. I mean, the main character, Steve Carell, was just coming off The Daily Show. He had done the spot in, Bruce Almighty, and of course he'd done Anchorman the year before, but he'd always been a side guy, and this really just propelled him into the mainstream and helped him get The Office, and so many other leading roles. And he's tremendous in this. I mean, he just plays it pitch perfect. I mean, supporting cast, Seth Rogen, it was this big breakout movie, propelled him. It kind of brought Paul Rudd back from a long kind of career. Obviously he had been Anchorman the year before that. I realized that, but this is a movie I think that really kind of brought Paul Rudd back, into the mainstream and really propelled him. Romany Malco, who I think is really underrated, criminally underrated actor that's kind of been stuck in a lot of supporting movies in like Blades of Glory, unfortunately The Love Guru. Like, he's kind of gotten stuck in some of these sort of mediocre roles, but he's really great in this movie. He almost steals it. And then, of course, you got even some people just show up. Like Kevin Hart shows up for a scene in this movie. Mindy Kaling shows up, for a scene or two. Jane Lynch broke out because of this movie. I mean, it's really tremendous, man. The people this, it's an absolutely stacked cast, and even though it kind of wasn't at the time, and man, it really holds up. It might be, I think it's easily pretty much top 10 comedies for me in general of all time. Like, it's I don't know where exactly it would rank. I know my kind of number 1 and number 2 already. We'll get to them very soon as sort of a hint. One's an A and one's a B. So, but it's definitely top 10. Tremendous, tremendous comedy. I know pretty much everybody's seen it, but man, if you haven't gone back and rewatched it, it really holds up. You can tell a lot of the movie was improvised, and just the absolute comedic geniuses behind the script of this, behind the performances. It's really something. So 40-Year-Old Virgin, man, if you haven't rewatched it in a little while, give it a look, and of course watch the DVD. Don't watch it on TV. Come on, what are you doing? So anyways, that'll probably wrap it up for episode 3. We're chugging along, got another interesting batch of movies coming up next week, and I can't wait to get to them. Can't wait to talk to you guys again. So for Austin Halliburton and Film Critiques, see you next time. Bye.